First of all, let me say this is a perfect reason why companies should take the time needed to make games and not simply release games in a broken state, because Halo is a testament to what happens when you take your time. The love-hate relationship is most likely going to be changed to love for most people. Let me explain. So Halo is back and is in almost perfect form. Halo 4, in my opinion, was okay, stroke good. Halo 5 was, well, it was Halo 5. One thing I do have to mention is my totally biased opinion on is the fact that Halo Infinite on Xbox, well, Series S and Series S, mouse and keyboard works out the box perfectly fine, and I had no reason to use my mouse and keyboard translator called the Zim Apex. It felt really good. I mean, it didn't make me a better person at the game. However, the fact that I could actually play it relatively easily because I'm coming over from PC gaming made this experience much more worthwhile for me. I've never really been a big fan of music in games. I thought it was always better with music, but it was never so impactful that I thought, oh, this music is amazing. I mean, there were one or two games in the past where I thought, wow, this sounds really good. Like Max Payne. I remember Max Payne having a really amazing soundtrack. I remember the original Halo soundtrack being very good as well, but for some reason, maybe it's because I haven't played Halo in such a long time. Maybe it's because the time frame between Halo 5 and Halo 6 was so massive, the gap was so huge, and the gameplay was so good that this music felt really, really good. It was really emotional in my opinion when those moments came up where Master Chief had to be emotional himself. The music went down to a really nice tone. It felt correct. Every single instrument, every single conversation had a good music backdrop or music in the background to it. It was impactful as well. I thought that every stroke of that piano, they have this really amazing piano sound, I believe it was, and it felt and sounded really good. The traditional Halo sound is back and it works really well as expected. The music sets the tone, in my opinion, very well. It's good news for streamers as well because there's no copyright strike. Everything here is original from the Halo studio, from 343 and whoever they commissioned to make the music. So if streaming Halo, you won't ever have an issue, or you shouldn't have an issue.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
I played Halo on both a 1080p TV and a 4K TV, and in both cases I thought the graphics looked good. They weren't exceptional, but they looked really good. I also played on performance mode because I thought the jump from 30 frames to 60 frames was just so impactful that there was no way I could play below 60 in any way. Honestly, I think because it's such a fast-paced game where you're actually being a Spider-Spartan, you're actually jumping around a lot and moving as quickly as you can. Having as much detail as possible is not worth lowering your frame rates, in my opinion. So as I said, played on performance mode. Now the cutscenes looked amazing. There is a lot of bokeh effects being used. So that simply means the background being blurred and the main character or characters in the forefront are very clear. I really like that effect because, again, I believe that this was a very emotional journey for Master Chief, and as such, having him and the other characters up front on screen and having everything else blurred out gave the effect of this is a really important meeting or conversation or dialogue happening. Um, Now, Baby Cortana, or the weapon as she's called, looks doesn't look as detailed as I would have hoped. She doesn't look as Cortana did in Halo 4 and 5, where Cortana was made, obviously they're both made up of light, but Cortana in 4 and 5 looked really light based. She had light lines running all the way through her. This Cortana, or the weapon, looked very solid. I didn't like that look for Cortana, but I understand why they went in this direction to make it noticeably distinct from the original Cortana. So all in all, graphics are good. I don't think it's groundbreaking or amazing as I've said before, but it is very serviceable, and having it at 60 frames per second is absolutely amazing. Now my TV does not support 120 frames, so I was capped at 60, but 60, very, very good in my opinion. I think the environment looks good. Now, the entire thing ran very well for me on the Xbox Series X, even though I did play on performance mode. Again, my TV was only 4K 60. It would have been nice to see different environments. All we got to see in this one was the open wilderness woodland type situation, and we entered some buildings, not much, but the buildings in this one look very reminiscent to Halo 4 and 5, where it was mainly Forerunner stuff. For the purpose of this story and what I think 343 has in mind moving forward, it makes perfect sense. Let me explain quickly. So, 343 have said that for the next 10 years, this is what Halo Infinite is going to be. This gives me the impression that we've only viewed one section of this Halo ring. I do believe we're going to get to see other sections of the ring, and in those other sections, we might have different biomes, different environments in buildings, outside in the wilderness with maybe more animals as well. But for now, I think this is what they've done, as this was an introduction as to what is to come. Glitches, and actually not that many glitches. Only came across two. The main one, which I think most games suffer from at some point, is that it did randomly crash on me once. That was it. Another glitch which I had to do with me not being able to turn properly on screen. So let me explain. I loaded into the game the very, very first time playing the campaign. I watched the cutscene, okay? I had not plugged in my mouse and keyboard. I had the controller in my hand, right? So I thought, actually, let me play this game with mouse and keyboard because I don't want to use my Zim Apex. Plugged in my mouse and keyboard, and I could only do half turns on screen. Not sure why, but I couldn't do a full 360. I could only turn 180. I quit the game, went back in with mouse and keyboard plugged in, and it worked fine. This seems to be a very random error because at times I would plug my mouse and keyboard in after the game's loaded and it worked perfectly fine, and sometimes it didn't. Another glitch which came up for me was the grenade glitch, and this glitch kind of branched off into two different ways that it would activate. If I'm in a cutscene, as soon as the cutscene ends, Master Chief would throw a grenade, even though I hadn't pressed any buttons at all. If I had died and loaded back in, he would throw a random grenade. Another way that that same grenade glitch would activate, if I'm grappling towards something or someone, the grapple would cancel halfway, and as soon as it cancels, Master Chief throws a grenade. This doesn't seem to happen to anyone else, so I'm making, well, any of my friends that played it, so I'm making the assumption that it's something to do with mouse and keyboard on Xbox Series X. Gameplay. Now, gameplay is by far, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. This is by far the best Halo gameplay I've ever experienced, and I've played all the mainline Halo games. The only two I couldn't play were those offshoots where you were just normal people. I just couldn't get into those ones for some reason. But every single Halo game I've played before, this is by far one of the best gameplay. The mechanics just feel so tight. The shooting, the guns, the movement, the sprinting, then sliding, then jumping, then doing that armor power thing where you smash down on the ground. It's just so amazing. Gameplay is smooth, it's simple, it's fun, it's clean. Not too many mechanics are there. We have 4 simple mechanics in total. I mean, other than the running, jumping, shooting. We have a grapple, which honestly, I don't know how we ever played Halo without the grapple after playing this. It just seems like such an amazing addition. This was definitely the next step in Halo's evolution. It doesn't seem like such a big thing, but when you actually play it and you use the grapple and you can get to places you couldn't get to before, or you can stun enemies after you've destroyed their shields, it's just amazing. We have the shield as well, which is something you can drop in front of you. It does help with some boss fights, but honestly, I didn't really use it that much. The grapple shot just made it so easy to get around the map quickly, well, or to get around the arena quickly. I didn't really use it much. The threat sensor is one I use quite a bit, especially towards the end of the game where you wanted to know where the enemies were. I use it quite a bit. And the thruster, I only ever use the thruster to get the achievement of using the thruster 50 times. There was never a time where the thruster made more sense than the grapple shot, but that's just me. I think a lot of people knew the thruster from Halo 4, I believe, and they wanted it to come over, so it makes sense. But yeah, the grapple shot. The grunts say the random things like, "Oh, look, he's swinging away," which is just so. Grunts are funny. Grunts are really funny, but them reacting to you using your grapple is just amazing as well. Shields are okay, as I've said. Thrusters are okay. Threat sensor is probably the best after the grapple shot. Um, And as I said, it's a nice and sensible progression system. Very simple. You get your Spartan cores, I believe, to upgrade stuff. They're dotted around the map. I've actually gotten the achievement from finding all of them. I think it's IGN has a decent map on finding them, but it's very good. It's very decent. Okay, so in the next section I have is story and characters. Now it was simple and it was focused. That's what I really liked about this. I'm going to give my impressions at the end as to what I think will happen next or why they've chosen this direction to take. I'm glad we got to see Cortana again. In Halo 5, Cortana was just like this really bad guy you're trying to hunt down. I didn't really like that angle for Cortana. I love the angle of Cortana and Chief going up against everything. So it didn't feel right in Halo 5. Change is good, but I think that much change so quickly didn't really gel well together. It feels like there should be DLC for this game, right? So again, I'm speaking about story and characters. It feels like a lot wasn't flushed out because the world you're on a Halo ring as an open world thing, and obviously you don't get to experience the entire ring. You get to experience whatever section you crash landed on, and it just this game is begging for DLC in my opinion. I think it's clear after playing this game that this game is definitely not the end for I'm going to call her Baby Cortana because at the end of the game you'll probably understand why. So I'm going to say Baby Cortana and Master Chief. This doesn't feel like the end of their story. It feels like something should come next. Now 343 have said, as I've mentioned before, that this is going to now be a live game, a live service game. They're going to try and add more content in the future. I believe that they said this was going to be 10 years. So I'm guessing that there's going to be DLC content throughout, well, DLC throughout the years, which adds to the story. And I really like that because, again, Baby Cortana, this open world, Chief's new abilities. There are dozens of Spartans on this rock. I don't know how many of them are alive. It would be really, really nice to actually meet up with some of these Spartans in a DLC. Hopefully the one that comes out in April, May, where you can play the story campaign with other people. It would be really nice if you could meet up with other Spartans like you did in Halo 5 and play the campaign that way. This campaign is begging for multiplayer in my opinion. The name Halo Infinite made it seem as if this was going to be the pinnacle, and I do believe in some aspects it was. The gameplay, the graphics, I don't know. The graphics were very good, but it didn't feel like it was groundbreaking to me. I think the weapon comes across as very charming and naive because, again, she's a baby Cortana. She's meeting Chief for the first time. Master Chief, the weapon, and the pilot, I think work really well together. And I think building future stories around them would make a lot of sense. The relationship between Chief and Baby Cortana is especially well done. There's this constant back and forth between them, and she feels so human to me, like a new person experiencing the world for the very first time, obviously. And he feels like such a broken person. I think the majority of this game was Master Chief just saying, wow, I failed Cortana. Wow, I failed the Spartans. Wow, so many people died. It just felt like this was his arc of just being hammered with emotion. And I loved it. He doesn't say much in this game, but every time he speaks, every time he has dialogue in this game, it feels as if, wow, that was really impactful. There was one time I remember Cortana and the pilot talking to him, and he wouldn't say anything, and it just gave the impression as if what was just said is just so deeply, well, is just hurting so deep that he just can't respond. Sometimes I genuinely think he's under his helmet crying. Honestly, that's what I feel like. I do also think this is the most human we've ever seen Master Chief, and I love it. Every single thing about Chief in this episode or this version of the game just felt like he's an actual human being. Even though he's a, I don't know, 7 foot tall super soldier wearing armor that weighs over 1,000 pounds, he can fall from space in the armor and wake up, shrug it off, and go kill some alien. This made him feel so incredibly human. His emotions, him acknowledging his failures and wanting to do better, and even though he cares about this version of Cortana because it's Cortana, he's willing to then sacrifice her, and she gets so upset that he's willing to kill her. It's a very emotional story. I have to say to 343, well done on this Halo game. This, again, as I said in the beginning, developers, take your time, get the writing done, get the graphics. This game came together so incredibly well. Final thoughts and theory for the next set of Halo games or DLC. I hope Cortana is here to stay. I hope the grapple shot is here to stay. I think the pilot role can be interchangeable because obviously he wants to go home. There's no chance for him to go home. Maybe bring in someone else. I really want to see more Spartans. I really want to experience the rest of the ring, and I think it makes sense for them to just have one huge map that you can keep going back and forth, killing aliens, whatever the case is, right? Cortana, the original Cortana, this is spoiler now. So she sacrificed herself based on what we can tell. However, my thing is, how did Cortana get from where she was to where she is now? She must have been transported by someone or something. So would she not make a copy of herself and leave it somewhere? All those versions of her that were about because of her rampancy, maybe one of them are still out there somewhere. I want to see original Cortana back, simply because she's grown with Chief, and even though the baby Cortana, it looks like Cortana, sounds like Cortana, thinks in some way like Cortana, it's not Cortana because the experiences that she's had with Chief aren't there. So I do feel a bit disjointed, but I still love the chemistry they have. Again, 343, well done. Thank you for this amazing Halo story. I am a big Halo fan, and it's very hard for me to say something bad about Halo. Um, However, some of the things, I think the graphics can be worked on. Even though it looked okay, it could have looked way better. But I get that it's an open world game. I get that this is one of the things we sacrifice for open world, and I think the open world makes more sense. It's a lot more fun, and I would rather have fun than have pretty graphics. So I get it. Story was a bit short. I think it could have been a bit longer. I do like my longer games, but again, for what it is, for there being so many side quests that make sense within that world, within that story, I do love it. They took their time, they took the extra year. I think the next DLC or the thing that comes out next needs to definitely not be 6 years. I think it's safe to say it's going to be maybe 2 years, maybe three, because now that they have the Sleep Space engine working really well, this Halo game was just amazing. If they continue with that same or similar theme moving forward of pure emotion, or maybe cycling through a few themes. So in this one, he was sad, he was bogged down, he was unhappy with the failures he's had. And maybe in the next one, he could maybe meet up with a few older people that he knew, and they start to lift him up, just by him saving more people, start to feel better. Whatever the case is, I'm not trying to give ideas here. I just love this game so much, and I want it to do well. But I'm going to stop here. Thank you guys for watching, listening, and stay tuned. Peace.